Okay, so it's time for us to get PHPStorm rocking and rolling. So let's go and install that. PHPStorm can be found at JetBrains. There. It's there at JetBrains, and pull the latest version, version 9. Let's get it going. Let's create all those associations. And I'm going to change that to PHPStorm. Storm. And let it do its thing. Okay, and there we go, PHPStorm's installed. So now that we have it installed, let's get it going. No previous versions, that's fine. It's going to ask you for your license key, so you need to add your license key now. Okay, so I've entered my license key. And there we go. Let's get this Windows thing out the way. Yes, allow access. Okay, I'm going to stick with the defaults here. Right, that's it. So we can now start to work with our code using this amazing IDE. So let's open the project. Let's go into our code directory, L5110. Okay. Don't want that. Close. Okay, so there we go. We've got our IDE installed. But now we need to be doing a few things to configure this IDE so that we get the maximum benefit from it. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go to Shift and search for plugins. No, not that. Under settings. Plugins here. Okay. We want Laravel, don't we? Okay, let's browse the repositories. And yeah, we see that plugin there, the Laravel plugin. That's the one we want. Let's install it. Okay, that. Apply. Restart. Okay, so we've got the plugin installed. Next, we need to install the IDE helper, which is another opportunity for us to take a look at some Composer functionality and how all of that hangs together. So let's do this. Let's go and search for IDE helper. That's the one we want. Okay, so what this thing does is it generates basically documents that the IDE understands so that we can have good and correct auto-completion based on the code base that we're working with. So the way to install this, and this is how using Composer packages works, and it's a good little side mission for us as well to do this. So you'll see it says we need to require that using Composer. So we issue that command, Composer command, and then we have to update our providers array, and then we generate the docs. We also can add some sections to our post update command. We'll go through what all of this means, and then we can publish the config file. So that's really what we need to be doing. So let's open our terminal window, and let's do as it says. It says composer require. Okay. Seed into our code, L5110, right. And let's paste that command. And I'm going to throw it into verbose mode. Okay. Okay, so it's done. Next, it says we need to add this to our providers array. So let's do that in PHPStorm app. Our config app file. Down here in the providers array, these are the ones that ship standard out the box. So let's go and drop it down there, and let's just also drop a doc block in. And let's say these are added service providers. Okay, cool. So we've done that. Jump back to the docs. Now you can regenerate the docs for yourself for future updates, but note that you have to clear that bootstrap compiled first. And you can do this automatically. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just set this up? So let's take that. And now let's go to our composer.json file, which is there, and go to the post update command section there. Let's drop that in, and let's get rid of the previous one. Okay, so what this is going to do, every time we run a composer update, it's going to automatically run the clear compiled command for us. It's going to generate our IDE docs, and then it's going to do the optimization as normal. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go back into here, and let's say composer update. And there we go. Okay, so it's done that. It's generated the docs for us. And now we need to publish its config file. And for that we use an artisan command. That one there. Okay. Let's do that. And there we go. So now if we go and look in the config directory, you'll see there's its configuration file for this helper class instance. Okay, we'll talk more about Composer a little bit later on, but that was just a quick intro to show you how we could pull a package off the web via instructions provided to us by the publisher of a package. Our mission right now is focused around the IDE, so we're not going to dig more into Composer now. We're going to jump back into the IDE and we're going to carry on with the configuration of the IDE editor. Okay, excellent. So now we need to go into settings. We need to go into other settings, Laravel plugin, and let's enable that plugin for this project. Click apply. Cool. Next thing, let's go languages and frameworks, PHP, and we see we've got no interpreter set up here. So we want to be using PHP 5.6 because we know that that's the version we've got. If we say PHP -v, you'll see there it's PHP 5.6. So that's the PHP we want to be using, but we don't have an interpreter set up, so let's do that. So we click the three dots, say plus, remote. Now, under normal circumstances, you could pick up the Vagrant file, but because it's not working correctly, we're going to go the other route. We're going to use SSH credentials. So we're going to say it's on localhost 127.0.0.1. The port is 2222. The username is Vagrant. The auth type is password, and the password is Vagrant. And the PHP path, let's just check that. Which PHP? That'll tell us user bin PHP. Okay, user bin PHP. All right, cool. Yes. Yes. Bingo. There we go. Okay, it's bitching about the mappings. We'll sort that out in a second. But we can see it's picked up our PHP version correctly. It's got all the information regarding the PHP INI file, so that's excellent. Okay, so let's apply that. Let's say OK. And let's say apply and done. Okay, so we've got that portion of it correctly set up now. Next, let's get proper in IDE debugging going. So what do I mean by that? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's go to our roots file, that one there. Let's comment that out. And let's say a is equal to 10, b is equal to 5, and c is equal to the sum of a plus b. A real ARB example. So if we wanted to inspect the value of c, yes, we could go die and dump, and we could say value of c, and let's just do it all in one line. We could do that, and if we go into our browser and we reload the page, we get the value of c. Okay, fine. The problem with that type of debugging approach is it's only going to get you so far. Eventually, when one gets to a point where you're doing complicated things, and especially in loop iteration, where you want to maybe step through a loop several times because the loop's doing something funny towards the end of its cycle, this type of thing kind of falls flat. So what we really want to be doing is want to be inspecting these values and being able to use the debugger facility that comes within, built into PHPStorm. Now, PHPStorm has the ability to listen for incoming xdebug PHP debug requests. Okay, so how do we make this gel? How do we make this hang together? Okay, so to do that, we go to the web and we search for PHPStorm bookmarklets, that one there. We go to the page and we generate the bookmarklets for xdebug, and we know it's xdebug. So let's drag the start debugger and the stop debugger up to our bookmark. Okay. So what this will now do is, when I hit start debug, that will inject the xdebug header requests into the packets. And because PHPStorm can be listening for them, it can then react. So, okay, let's make it work. So the first thing that we do is we get this into green. Okay. So there you can see it's in green. Great. The next thing that we have to do on the first time that we set this thing up, we say run break at first line in PHP scripts. Okay. Then we go into our browser, we say start debugger, and we hit refresh. PHPStorm will see the incoming request. And now we have to tell it, okay, this file here, this absolute path on the server, corresponds to that file path on our local file system. So we say accept. Now if we jump into the debugger, we can see this is the first line of PHP code, and it's giving us the debug information for this line and for this page. Okay, let's run through. And if we now say run remove that break at first line, we can now throw a breakpoint. Let's say there. And if we go back into our page and we hit refresh, up it pops, and there we can see it's broken at that line. However, we don't want to be debugging in this page. We want to be debugging in that page. Okay, so let's let it run through. Now, let's set a breakpoint there, and let's reload and see what happens. Okay, we reload, the page returns, and PHPStorm tells us, hang on, there was a mapping misconfiguration. And that's because we need to create the high-level association. And the way we do that is we go into settings, we go into languages and frameworks, PHP servers. Now it would have created this as a result of what we've just done. Then we go to the very top line where it says the root of our project on the local drive. We give it the mapping on the server, the absolute path. And we know that absolute path is home/vagrant/code/L5 We say apply. Say OK. There's our breakpoint. Now, if we go back into the browser and we reload, now it's associated it, and from here on we can now do proper debugging. We can inspect the values. There you can see it showing us A and B. We can throw watches to the side if we wanted. We can step over, we can step into, we can do everything that we want. So that's how we get proper integrated in IDE debugging going. Good stuff. We've made really good progress. We're now at the point where we've got one final little thing to do, which is delve into Git in terms of setting the git ignore files up, and or understanding what the git ignore files do, and looking at Git from a project's perspective in terms of how we manage the Laravel environment from a source repository and source control perspective using Git. And once we've done that, well, then we can get into the real funky stuff where we can actually start to properly play with Composer. We can start to play with Bower and Elixir, and we can dive down that whole, we can go down that whole path. We can get all that stuff sorted out. So yeah, we're making really good progress now. Excellent. I'll see you in the next section where we talk about Git.